Hey crew, so I am here to tell you that Daybreak is back and feels so much better with the changes that Bungie made in Lightfall to the super and the extra damage that it does now, to Phoenix Dive, which is our class ability, and the changes to the fragments that grant restoration and healing along with fire sprites. Then we have good old Prometheus Lens that got a great buff and it just plays into our Daybreak Warlock and our exotic armor piece so well now. Dare I say a Daybreak main can be meta this season. Now I know Well of Radiance Warlocks and Starfire protocol are still amazing, and in certain encounters like let's say a boss DPS and raid, it is still very good to have a well for that damage and survivability. But if you're running legend or master content like this last sector you see me clearing in the gameplay, or just running about Neomuna, or you're just freaking bored of Starfire and Well of Radiance like I am, I urge you guys to try this Daybreak build because it's just infinite ignitions and scorching, and our scorch damage can tick for 3k, 4k, and even 5k damage. And it really feels like you can just ignite and burn every enemy you come across. This is what Daybreak should really feel like. Oh, and we can also handle barrier and unstoppable champions now just from our subclass, which is amazing because it allows us to use whatever weapon we choose. If you do enjoy this video or find it helpful, then make sure to hit that subscribe button for me, and a like on the video would be very much appreciated. Make sure to pay attention to all the mods and the exotics because they do a ton for the overall build. This entire build starts with our super Daybreak because it got a very nice buff this season. It got a 25% damage buff in PvE and can basically throw double the blades that it did before, since they reduced the cost of each throw from 10 down to 6. Then to add a bit more, they reduced the super to only 9 minutes, so a quicker cooldown. As you can see on Golgoroth over here, we can get close to 500k, so $500,000, and if I'm not mistaken, that might put it in the top 5 damage for supers, I think? Maybe somebody else can confirm that for me down in the comments. Now I do know it takes a second to throw all your blades, but my point is that when it comes to high health targets or champions, Daybreak can actually do some damage now. Before, this thing hit like a wet noodle. Next we have the Prometheus Lens as our exotic weapon of choice. You could technically use Skyburner's Oath as well, but I really like the power of Prometheus with this one. Bungie updated it with the incandescent perk, which I know a ton of you love, and it really makes the weapon a lot better, and here's why. With the updated fragment this season called Ember of Searing, we get melee energy for defeating scorched targets, and when we defeat scorched targets we create fire sprites. This pairs so well with Prometheus Lens now because our beam scorches on hit when we hold the trigger down, and we scorch on kill with incandescent, so we're scorching 2 ways just with the weapon alone. And our weapon is adding scorch stacks to enemies that are a bit beefier, so technically the harder content you push with this, the better the build becomes. As you can see in this lost sector, you can ignite multiple red bar enemies, even the Goliath cabal that were pushing us, and as you can see with the champions and the high health targets at the end, everything just ignites over and over. With Prometheus Lens, we compare our weapon and one ability and make an instant ignition. So our melee ability and our weapon can ignite anything, and we're going to have that melee up so often that you won't know what to do with it. Prometheus also adds a lot of extra damage with its burn thanks to our exotic armor piece, which we'll go over in a second. And that's where we get some crazy burn damage from. Now we want to have our melee up as much as possible because it's going to make us and our allies radiant for that free 25% weapon damage boost, and we're going to use it with Prometheus Lens to always have an ignition on demand. So for our 2 aspects, we're taking Touch of Flame, which lets our firebolt grenades track and reach further enemies, and then we're going to take Heat Rises, and the main reason for this is when you get kills while airborne we get melee energy back, and this can be a small hop off the ground when you kill something, so even when your melee or grenade make contact with enemies, just do a small little hop or a bunny hop and watch the insane amount of melee energy you will get back in return. It only takes 3 or 4 kills to get a full charge back if you remember to just hop in the air when you're killing things. For our fragments, we're taking Ember of Searing, which we already went over. We get even more melee energy and create fire sprites when defeating scorched targets, and all of our abilities and our weapons scorches targets. Next we take Ember of Ashes to apply more scorch stacks to targets to get those ignitions going off quicker. Then we take Ember of Torches for that sweet radiant buff, and last we take Ember of Mercy so we get restoration from picking up fire sprites, which you should be doing constantly, and if we revive an ally we also get restoration, and our allies get the restoration buff as well. You can create a fire sprite every 3 to 4 seconds, and since our weapon is going to do this for us, you will always see them on the field for you to pick up, and you get that nice 15 to 20% grenade energy when you pick one up. I like using Phoenix Dive because it's fast and gives us cure, and if you consume a grenade with Heat Rises it can also scorch and give restoration to us, so I take Phoenix Dive for the class ability. For the grenades you want to take Fire Bolts, and you want to pair this with the 3 artifacts that enhance our Fire Bolts this season. But as you can see in the gameplay, all you need is Prometheus Lens and the melee, and the grenades are just added bonus to all of this. You want to take Flare Up so our Fire Bolts cause more scorch and create fire sprites on hit, Rain of Fire Bolts for that second charge of our grenade, and Solar Surge so when you pick up a fire sprite you get an armor charge. Now for our exotic armor piece, which adds a ton to this build, and that is Dawn Chorus. The armor perk here is Rites of Ember. Your Daybreak projectiles cause targets to scorch on contact, which means every 2 blades that we throw out will cause an ignition. Our scorch effects deal more damage. This is a 3 times damage increase to any scorch effect that we're dealing, which means our abilities are providing this. Our Prometheus Lens weapon is also providing this, and it's just adding that much overall damage to the entire build. And then lastly here, you gain a small amount of melee energy each time your scorch effects damage a target. Since we're always damaging targets with scorch, you'll see your melee just tick up and up, and that's when you combine it with heat rises and just do the small bunny hop, and you'll have your melees back instantly. Now for the mods on the build, on the helmet I was running double special ammo finder so I could keep special ammo up in the Prometheus Lens, and then also solar siphon, rapid solar weapon final blows, create an orb of power just to feed into the orbs of power in the gameplay loop. On the gauntlets I was using impact induction, causing damage with a melee attack, reduces your grenade cooldown, firepower, your grenade final blows create orbs of power, and then focusing strike, class ability energy when you cause damage with a melee attack. So our melee is feeding our class ability here and feeding our grenade. Then on our chest piece we just had concussive dampener and void resistance, and then a solar reserve just to keep more ammo in Prometheus Lens. On the boots we have innervation, reduce grenade cooldown each time you pick up an orb of power, absolution, reduce all ability cooldowns each time you pick up an orb of power, and solar scavenger to get more ammo in Prometheus Lens. On the class item, Reaper, after using your class ability, your next weapon final blow spawns an orb of power. I like Reaper in a lot of my builds because it's just a free orb of power for using your class ability, and you always use your class ability on all characters. I also have time dilation, your decaying armor charge has longer duration, so our armor charges can last longer, and I'm going to show you a swap up that we can use for that. And then also special finisher. Finishers generate special ammo for the whole fire team, consumes 3 stacks of armor charge. Now for time dilation on your boots, if you're doing harder content and maybe not picking up so many orbs of power, right, because you have to stay back from enemies a little bit more, on the boots I would use 2 solar surges with your solar scavenger to give a 17% weapon damage bonus to Prometheus Lens. And then on the gauntlets you could also, in easier content, throw on grenade kickstart and use your armor charges that way, since you don't need the extra damage, and you throw your grenade and you're going to get that grenade back quicker for firebolts. So there's a lot of options as far as the mods go for the build, and that just goes to show you how strong the base build of this is with the subclass and the 2 exotics. Then you throw on those artifact mods like I said, with the solar surge, the flare up, and the rain of firebolts. Then you could also throw on shatter orbs. The first time you break a combatant's shield, you create an orb of power if you break the shield with matching damage type. So if solar shields pop up, you're going to be creating a ton of orbs of power. And I'm not sure if I mentioned stats on the build, but if I haven't, 100 resilience for that damage reduction, 100 discipline to keep up your grenades as much as possible, and then push your recovery up high as possible because that's your Phoenix Dive cooldown. And those are the 3 stat mods I would aim for. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope you guys give Daybreak a try because it's really, really fun, even in difficult content. The harder the content, the better it actually is because it allows more ignitions to happen. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys all in the next video. Have a great rest of your day.